On this episode, JD and Dude bring on Minden Mill to discuss their rye whiskey. So sit back, grab a pour, kick up your feet, and enjoy this episode of The Bourbon Hunters.
Gather round the mic, it's time to unwind. Drinking our bottles, all that we find. With tastings and tales, we're sharing our pours. Tune in each week, there will always be more. Tune in each week, there's lots to hear. Laughter and stories, we're all here to share. We're giving our ratings, they're always fair. Sit back, grab a pour, kick up your feet and enjoy.
While you're listening, head over to our website at bourbonhunters.com where you can purchase Bourbon Hunters glassware and products, and sign up for our Patreon, which puts you on the list for single barrel announcements from our private barrel club.
Tune in each week, sit back. Tune in each week, grab a pour. Tune in each week, kick up your feet and enjoy. Kick up your feet and enjoy.
Welcome to another episode of The Bourbon Hunters. I'm Dude Cool, and I'm joined by
JD Fritches.
And today we are going to be tasting some Minden Mill Nevada straight rye whiskey. And on the podcast we have...
I'm the master distiller there. I'm Joseph O'Sullivan.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Of course. So, Joseph, as we kind of let you know beforehand, we like to drink a little bit as we go. But before we have our first drink, give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself, your history, how you got to Minden Mill, and, you know, what got you into the business of doing, you know, rye and whiskey. I know you guys have a bourbon and I think a single malt as well.
Yeah.
Tell us the story.
Yeah, I have one of those like really incredibly lucky careers. I started off at the beginning of the whole craft distilling boom in the mid early 2000s, 2005. And I started at a place called Clear Creek Distillery, which was known for working with orchardists and making really fancy pear brandy and Calvados and Slivovitz and that connection with, with just kind of working with orchardists, with the earth and what we were growing out there in the Hood River Valley was just, it meant a lot to me. And I had worked there for years, starting in 2005, spent a little while in New York, where I consulted on and worked in a fair number of their first distilleries that popped up when the wave got there, and then came back to run Clear Creek again after it had been purchased by Hood River Distillers. And at that point, when I took that second part of my job, it was about overseeing more than just the one project that I really loved, which was this fine fruit brandy, but also like seeing the continued development of things like Pendleton, which they owned at the time, and launching of new small brands like Trail's End, which was a bourbon that we were making. And just kind of understanding that there's a lot more than what I was initially taught broadened my interests. And at one point I got called, I got headhunted to take this job out here, to run Minden Mill. And it was really obvious to me that this was the right choice. One, not even more so than it would be for my career, is just my curiosity. We're an estate distillery. And so here at Minden Mill, we grow all of our own grain that we put in the bottle. So me working with the Duckwalls, pears was this great transition, initial growth period for me to go from small orchard to large packing house to growing 1,200 acres of grain is what we have at the top of our limit right now.
Wow.
And I was really scared. I'm not going to lie. Like, I understand fruit pretty well. I know how to torture a fruit tree into giving me really, really good plums, but not really knowing anything about grain was a very different challenge. And coming here, I started to really learn a little bit more about why terroir matters within whiskey itself and kind of why we're reaching that point now. And as an estate distillery, this is something we're really, really pretty gung-ho about. We helped write the laws on the estate distilling license with our brothers and sisters at Frey Ranch. We love those guys. And now we've joined the EWA, the Estate Whiskey Alliance, the University of Kentucky, to really prove that there's something of note that comes out of a location when you're talking about whiskey. And that if you can get grain from that area, you're going to get something different than you get from anywhere else. And I love that we're talking about the rye today, because I think that the rye has the best example of that.
All right. Well, I like the story. So talk about that transition going from, like you said, from fruit to grain. Like what was that learning curve like for you, and where did you go to learn?
Well, initially I've always been taught on the job. There wasn't really like um, there's nothing more than kind of a rough apprenticeship in the distilling world when I started. Now there, you can go to University of, I think Davis has a program, and there's a couple in Oregon. It's becoming more popular. You can actually like study it, but just like everything else, I've kind of, when I've not been a distiller, I've been a carpenter. And so I've always been a person that just kind of wants to learn through experience. And I'm also willing to get incredibly dirty at any time in order to get this education. So just like when I was, when I had originally started working at Clear Creek, I would just kind of bug the farmers until I learned a lot. I bug the ranchers here. And one of the great things about it is quite how much I've learned, and how I've been able to take so much of it into kind of reflecting on other aspects, just the nutritional quality of the soil. It reminds me to check the nutritional quality of the mash that our yeast is going into. So it just kind of elevates everybody else. And I think the team that I have here is probably the most, my God, are they smart? Like this is a really bright group of people, and it kind of scares me because I one of these days they're going to find out that I'm a total phony.
So talk about, I guess, going from fruit to grain, as far as like, the milling process, and then, like dealing with different types of grains like rye versus,
Yeah.
corn and different things like that. Like, is rye like stickier or something like that to deal with, or
Yeah, rye can be really sticky. Man, there's a pain in the ass quality about every one of them. Let's start with the corn. We have a very, I've been trained by my media staff to not call it awful growing conditions, but to call it challenging. So these are awfully challenging growing conditions. They're really, really bad. And
you still got
we
awful.
have about, yeah, well, yeah, you gotta. I ain't selling out on my messaging about the climate around here. Yeah, it's really rough. I mean, it's really hot in the summer. It's really cold in the winter. We're at about 5,000 feet. We have frost that goes as late as May and as early as September. It's getting to be approaching freezing at night here, and it's still 85 90 degrees during the day, so you have this massive diurnal shift.
Yeah.
And that's not great for grain. And so with our corn, we use what's known as an earth tones corn, which has this really limited growing window where it can mature in these harsher conditions. It's originally it's going to be, it's what is often regarded as like an Indian corn. It has lots of carotenoids. It has a lot of it has lots of red. It has lots of green on it. Anthocyanins, that's what it is. And all of that impacts flavor as well. So you get this really nice cola note that comes out of it. But it is still difficult to grow it here because corn likes a lot of water. We are in the high desert. Right. But we've had a good amount of success. Rye actually grows great around here. It's a pain for processing because it is really sticky. But growing around here is it does well. I mean, rye kind of likes the winter. It's a winter rye, so we do well with that one. And then when you get into things like barley and wheat and oats, I mean, we don't have to grow those ones every year, and thank goodness, because they're just kind of picky and difficult and irritating. But that was another big insight kind of coming into it when you talk about the transition from fruit to grain is really understanding just the amount of expression that you can get out of a different heirloom or heritage varietal of corn. And that these corns, which are typically used for masa or tortillas or something like that, these are going to have a lot more of a corn flavor. And therefore, I mean, you can get a lot of really nice impact. You can also have a larger, if it's going to have a lot of corn flavor to it, and that's going to come out in the whiskey. In this case, it's kind of a cola, quite a little bit of a note with the bourbon, and the rye makes it a little bit of like a cherry cola at the end.
Nice.
You do really kind of see that within a varietal that there's a ton of opportunity, and there is something to kind of stressing it out. So within your environment, it's not the best for yields, but it does make some really interesting grain. Of course, you don't want to get too close to the difficult window because you still want to crop every year. But
that makes sense.
Yeah, varietals matter, and I'd always read that, I'd always heard that, but boy, was it not as obvious to me even after all my time in this industry until I started working with it on a daily basis.
So you talked about some of the different grains, and I know you have a bourbon, so it's got to be 51% corn or more. But you've also we're talking about the rye today, so you've got Nevada Straight Rye Whiskey. Do you guys publish your mash bill?
Oh yeah, it's 80% winter rye, 10 barley, 10 wheat.
Okay, so no corn. We've got wheat, barley,
no corn,
and then rye. And then the rye that we have in front of us, what is that? 4 years? Is that right?
Mm-hmm. That's a 4-year. That's correct.
Non-chill filtered, and then also 47% alcohol, 94 proof.
Yeah, in 47 kind of came at us where it's a little bit of one of those, like, you make a decision at the call of a moment, in a moment's notice for good reason, and you kind of stick with it. We originally were intending to go at 92 proof just to kind of be at that point where you wouldn't see any flocculent developing within an oily, flavorful, rich bourbon or whiskey like what we have, like a rye.
Yeah,
and we saw something that was starting to look like flock, which really told us that there's a ton of flavor in there. So kicking it up to 94 was also to keep the presentation really nice, as well as just it was a bit of a confirmation that there's a lot of fatty aminos and things like there that give it the rich flavor it has.
Cool. So talk us through this rye. What order in the release schedule was this for what you guys have been releasing as a distillery?
Two. I mean, and yeah. So the bourbon was the first that we released, and then the rye, and then the single malt was the one at the end.
Okay. So what was go ahead? What was the process behind? Go ahead with the mash bill and all that stuff.
Well, the idea is really to focus on the grain that we have here, and what we noticed with the rye is that it really has a strong kind of candied orange quality to it, and that would be best to be matched up with a little bit of the gumminess that came from the barley and just the mouthfeel that you get from the wheat itself. And we wanted to be high rye, but a full rye cook is pretty rough on our equipment. We're a whiskey house. I know we later on went out and started making a 100% rye vodka, so that whole principle went out the window. But an 80% rye does run a lot easier than a 100% rye as well. So it's a combination of just trying to make sure the right flavor, but also a design that really honors that people can be excited about making, and that runs really well on our equipment and all that.
All right, so I'm actually ready to jump into this. You already mentioned a little bit citrusy type quality I get some of that on the nose. But if you want to talk us through, we generally, the way we'll do it is we'll nose it, we'll kind of just taste it, give our notes on it. And so I guess I don't want any outside influence on, I guess, our notes, if that's okay with you.
Happy not to.
But go ahead, JD. I know, and just a little transparency for you, Joseph. I'm probably the least rye guy on this podcast, but JD is a very big rye lover. I like ryes. There are certain ones that I really am a fan of, but there are some that I'm just not a big fan of either. And so far, what I've noticed from the nose on this one, I've actually been enjoying this.
So I'll tell you a little bit more about the production as we go through this. And then, but I won't give any flavor notes, and that's kind of what you're looking for, right?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Awesome. So because we didn't really talk about the barrels, and a tremendous amount of what is good about a whiskey is going to be the barrel influence.
Right.
So this is all done in 36-month air dried American oak. And so number 3 char bourbon barrels, which we have aging in our rick house that's climate controlled. And one of the difficult things about maturing whiskey in the high desert is that you lose a tremendous amount of angel share.
Sure.
In the local environment, and not trying to do any climate control at all, we would lose between 2 and 3% a month.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine that, like, when your goal, and this is me as a distiller, like, what I kind of like a lot of angel share. I think it makes a better whiskey. So, like, being really precious about every drop, I think is a foolhardy thing to do, but because you want it to kind of exercise itself a little bit. Like, it's important. The angels don't take the good whiskey. They take the rough stuff. That's what's great about them. So, you want to look for like 5% a year. That's like a generous distill. That's like my running goal is 5% a year, but to see 2 to 3% go up per month, you realize you got to do some climate control. And so we match it up with just a region that we really, really thought was fantastic, and also just kind of a cute thing to do. So it's that rickhouse itself is climate controlled to match the same humidity and temperature as Bardstown, Kentucky.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And the whole production is really nice too. I mean, it comes in, we get in our mill, run it over to the distillery, load in, and then it goes into a 5,000 gallon cooker, brings in about 10,000 pounds of grain per cook in that ratio that I mentioned. And then it's kicked over after a week it's kicked over to a 5,000 gallon wooden fooder. So we're not doing any sour mashing or anything like that. We're using some of this within the wood micro colony that just lives in there no matter what. You can clean it all you want, but at some point stuff is just going to be alive in there. And that's all kind of the secondary fermenters that give it that help like mature the taste a lot during the fermentation. And then after that, we run it through a stripping still where no cuts are made, but then we run it through a 1,300 gallon Christian Carl hybrid still with this really beautiful, really nice neck on it. So it never sees any plates or anything like that, but it goes through this really intricate piece of equipment that we have. And that's kind of the full rundown of just production. It's really super fun. I nerded out about all of the more technical stuff a lot of the time at this point in my career. At one point you start strong. If you work with them enough, you develop some really strong opinions on pumps.
So you just geek out over everything, I guess, at some point, right?
Yeah. It's the evolution of your craft is that you find these little focuses.
No, I understand. I mean, I guess every professional is going to do that in whatever industry they're in. I'm going to interrupt here real quick before we go back to some more, but JD, go ahead and give your nose on this.
First, it's got a beautiful color for 4 years old.
It
actually looks like it's older than it is, and that probably attributes to your climate-controlled warehouses and what the magic there happens. Secondly, I always love when I get a nose and it takes me back to a place. And it's funny you said orange in the earlier on, because I remember being a kid and getting all hot and sweaty outside. We weren't allowed to come home, for hours. Parents would be like, yeah, go out there, don't come home, and
until dinner.
Yeah. Or after dinner. All right, go back out until the streetlights come on, but I would come back inside, and when you're bringing your glass to your mouth because you're so dehydrated, and you get that whiff of orange high C.
That is one of my favorite things anyone's ever said about this. JD, I'm going to share this with you. Maybe like 3 years ago, I did a presentation at Tales of the Cocktail that was entirely on the limbic system and how smell influences memory and how distillers have used that to create their spirits. And I have a 10-minute video of all of these distillers from across the country relating that exact same thing that you just did about their alcohol. I'm going to send it to you if you don't mind.
No, please do.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really cool, fun little thing. It was a presentation I did. So I totally love that you came up with that. That spoke my language, man.
Usually before he starts, I tell people to buckle up because he's always got some sort of thing. And I didn't this time. And I honestly thought I was going to steal the thunder today because my story that I was going to tell was similar. And I don't normally do this, but actually, my grandparents didn't grow up. While I was growing up, they were snowbirds and they would go down to Florida and they stayed in a town called Frostproof in the middle of Florida. And it was about an hour south of Orlando. And it's right in the middle of the state. But on the way to there, we would always pass by the Donald Duck orange juice factory. And I'd never heard of that company ever in my life. And I had gotten some from my grandparents. They had gotten some because they knew I always talked about it. So one of the times I went down there, they had gotten some for me. And I had some of the orange juice. And this actually, when I nosed this, it actually reminded me of being down at my grandparents in Frostproof, Florida, and them getting me some of that Donald Duck orange juice.
That is amazing.
Yeah. It's the first time I've had that type of a recollection like you do. But yeah, he's really good.
Oh, hell, man. That is great. I love that. I'm going to have one of my own. And it's logged down. Every time I have this rye, I'm now going to think of this wonderful podcast where we all bonded so closely.
So let me jump in real quick. I've got a question for you here in a second. But before we taste this, one thing I did want to point out is the bottle. I love this bottle. It's very sturdy. It's got a nice slender, but I don't even know. It almost kind of feels like Art Deco-ish mixed with like Western culture kind of thing, with all the different little angles on it. But then also kind of that, I don't know, like the embossing up the side, and it just kind of feels like something Western mixed with Art Deco. That's just my immediate take off of it.
Yeah, if you're running out of the room, you can slide it in sideways and you still know what you got.
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's, I mean, I wish I was as talented as our bottle designers and what they do at their jobs. I would do at mine. They're amazing. And I had all those same thoughts because like what they put together was really cool. And one of the things I also thought too about the embossing is it reminds me of when it's on its side of a brick. Every once in a while, you see that one random brick that has the brick company's name on it, and I always loved that. I always wanted, for some reason, that was like, I knew I'd make it if I had a house with like a special brick in it.
A special brick. That's funny. But yeah, it's a sturdy.
I haven't made it.
Yeah, I feel like this would do really well in a bar. It's easy to grab. It's easy to pour, and it's just a really sturdy. It's got that really thick bottom to it that you just know it's going to have some heft. And then it just, I don't know, it's the texture and the feel and shape of it just is, it's got a nice look. And it definitely stands out just a little bit enough anyway, if you didn't know what it was, to make you wonder what it is.
Mm-hmm. So I am gonna take a little credit on the on production side on this. Like we threw a little bit of a hissy fit about making sure that it was heavy on the bottom so it wouldn't tip over on the bottling line.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that came into the design as well, but it certainly fulfilled it. We were really thrilled about that.
Yeah, it's just a nice. We talk about bottles a lot on the podcast. I feel like the design, at the end of the day, you're not going to buy it again if it's not good inside the bottle, but it might make someone buy it for the first time to try it out at least. And I feel like anything that has, if it's too gimmicky looking, I feel like, that there's probably nothing.
You're
good
compensating for something.
Yeah. But if it looks, good, but still classic to some degree, that's always a plus for me. And I feel like this has that kind of look to it. So.
And let's be honest, our wives are looking for pretty bottles, right?
Oh yeah. 100%.
Oh yeah.
My wife I call her, she's a package whore is what we call her. When we would be into wine, when we'd be into, like, it doesn't matter what it is, cereal, like snacks. If it has a pretty package, she loves to grab it off the shelf.
That's why I stuff socks.
Oh, one of the best things, one of the best perks about being a distiller over a winemaker or beer guy is that we get the cool bottles.
Yeah,
like we all, every one of us gets a really cool perk, but we get the cool bottles.
I'm going to go ahead and dive into
so
this,
some other notes I was picking up on it. I got like a puff pastry, a little bit of like confectioner sugar on there.
Confectioner sugar, yeah.
And then I've also picked up a slight bubblegum note, like you get out of a Topps card pack.
Yeah.
So that's the confectionery sugar. That's That's a really interesting observation that I haven't made yet, but I totally agree with you. But it is it's when we talk about our rye vodka, it's where we go initially is confectionery sugar, because that is a really kind of special sort of sweetness that's just, it's never cloying. There's something really kind of nice about it when it's mixed with the caramel qualities that the oak would give.
For me, a lot of times that confectioner sugar goes along with that bubblegum flavor, just like that, when you open up the baseball card pack and that like little puff of, sugar, that powdered sugar or whatever they put on that little hard stick of gum, kind of puffs up and you kind of get that right before you put it in your mouth. I feel like that's that confectioner sugar and that bubblegum, they kind of coincide to me.
The candied cigarettes that puffed a little bit, they always had that stuff with it.
That's good.
I went to school with a box of those rolled up in my sleeve one time. It was not a good idea.
We would have been friends. Not cool enough to smoke, but certainly trying to look that good.
Right.
Exactly. I didn't have the balls to smoke, but I had the balls to look like I smoked.
You stand in the corner and you go, Arthur Fonzarelli.
I don't know about all that.
No.
But all right. So I just dove into this a little bit. I'm going to let JD catch up if you haven't already.
No.
I get a very, very, very slight dillness to it, which that light doesn't bother me. I've always said I love dill pickles. I don't always like that dill flavor in my rye, especially when it's overpowering. This is very subtle. It allows some of the other flavors to come out to me, so that's good. Some of that citrus still comes through for me. It's not as strong as in the nose. The sweetness is definitely there. I get a little bit of the caramel. But yeah, this is an interesting rye in the sense that the flavors that I'm getting out of it, that, there's a rye spice on the finish still on the back of the tongue, which, is fine with me. All of this so far I'm enjoying, and I've only been one drink into it really, but I'm going to take another one.
This is going to throw you for a little whirlwind. Probably never heard it before regarding the taste on this. I'm getting like a cucumbery melon.
Melon. I can get some melon. I can definitely get melon on this. Some of the more some of the Japanese melons. Okay, I get a little bit more of that.
But like a crispness from the cucumber, it's just so subtle.
Like a freshness. I could see that. I don't get melon necessarily, but I get that feeling of like when you have a cucumber, like a fresh cucumber. I know what you're saying there, I think. I just had another drink and I get a little bit of a funk, the good funk that we like that makes it feel like it's got some age to it. Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying this. I think it's good. It's
not offensive one bit.
Right. This is a rye that I could drink, and that's high praise for me.
Really?
Yeah, I was gonna say, as a bourbon drinker, what do you think about this rye appeals to you? Because it's not the first time I've heard bourbon drinkers say, I don't really care for rye, but I do like this.
Yeah.
And so but I've never asked anyone like, what was it?
That's a good question. To be honest, I'm not really sure what pinpoints it for me when it comes to which ryes I like versus the ryes I don't like. The ryes that I don't like generally have one thing in common. Well, maybe two things in common, but one thing for sure, and that's that overpowering dill flavor. Can't stand it. I hate when a rye has an overpowering dill flavor, and for whatever reason, I don't know what causes that. But I will say some of the ryes that I do like seem to have a lower barrel entry proof. I don't know what your barrel entry proof is, but I don't know.
120.
Yes, I mean that's not as high as it can be, I guess. But and I wonder if the non-chill filtered maybe has a little bit of effect on it, and that, like you said, those little fatty acids and things like that are potentially, providing, a little bit more flavor for me. I don't know. I really honestly don't know, but yeah, go ahead.
I have a theory, but it's not in any way founded. I wouldn't want to say it on camera, but after we're done, I'll tell you my theory. It's something that's worth looking into that I might kind of dig into, but certainly nothing I'm going to make a statement about.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, for one, it could be the wheat softening it a little bit. It could be the barley also. I mean, that's 20% of the, when you think of your typical 95.5, rye whiskeys, you're not giving much room for the malted barley and for something else to potentially have an effect on that mash bill. but you add that in, and I mean, maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's that mash bill. I mean, that could be part of it, but that's going to lead me to, not exactly, but I'm wondering in my head right now, to my next question, which I was going to ask earlier. And that you talked about the environmental control warehouse for the aging, and you're
Mhm.
emulating that Bardstown, I guess, environment and geography, or whatever you want to call it, from a weather perspective. Now, how does that work? Do you work on the averages of Bardstown at certain times of the year, or do you actually
Ye-
see what they are and just every day?
We in the past did the latter, where we had it like at the moment. At one point, you can only fix so many compressors and feel okay about something like that.
Yeah.
And so now it's an average based off of it's an average just kind of based off of what's happened over the last several years, kind of in line with it.
So you're matching the humidity, you're matching the temperature,
Those
basically,
two, yeah.
and is it seasonally? So you're doing like a winter season and a summer season, a spring and a fall, or how does that work?
It's like a 2 week. It's like a 2 week adjustment.
Okay. So
it tracks it pretty close.
okay, gotcha. That's interesting. So I've always wondered, because places like Old Forester do heat cycling,
Mhm.
and I wonder how. I don't think theirs is seasonally matched. I think it's just they go up and down, I think, daily, and
It,
I don't think they ever match seasons or anything like that. So I was just wondering how you guys did that.
and this is my belief. The thermal load of the liquid within the barrels, as well as the mass of the wood itself, is going to insulate it pretty significantly from rapid changing. It's really the long cycle changing that would do
That makes
anything
the
to
difference.
allow it to really breathe and bring in oxygen to create esters.
That makes sense. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, when you think about just the way that liquid, takes a little bit longer to kind of
Mhm.
change the temperature. You said it in a scientific way.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a certain amount of energy
Yeah,
to do that, and it's like even a small rickhouse contains a lot of stored temperature
oh,
in
sure.
liquid. I
Yeah,
mean, even you get even 500 barrels, 300 barrels in a room that's appropriate. You're going to go in there in the fall, and it's going to be the warmest room. Um, you're going to go in there in the spring, and it's going to be the cold. Are you going to be the coldest? Like
yeah,
it's just they carry that heat for months,
right.
and so rapid cycling never really made much sense to me.
No, I mean, that kind of makes sense. I mean, I think it makes sense to me with my unscientific, you know, information and knowledge about that kind of stuff. But I mean, that does, you've got to allow it to have that time interacting with the wood. And if you're doing it too quick, I guess I feel like that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean,
Yeah, and there's probably someone out there that's got great information to prove me wrong. But yeah, I'm just kind of going off of what I know.
sure. No, I mean, trial and error. You do what's working for you
Mhm.
guys. Now,
Exactly.
how much do you think? Yes, you can control, heat cycle and do all that kind of stuff, humidity and everything. How much does altitude play into how you have to, like, do you have to adjust the environment for altitude to make up for, like, go an extra 5 degrees warmer, an extra 5 degrees cooler, anything like that?
I don't think we truly understand quite on the maturation side, even us, how altitude affects it beyond just kind of observational theory.
Hmm.
So that's another reason why we're matched to just a different location. Because it's just not really I don't really know what the being at this high does to evaporation rates. There's just not a lot of information on it.
Yeah.
I'd be really curious to find a place with the exact same type of climate other than other than altitude, but or get a bunch of averages. But that's the kind of thing that'll just come out as we kind of advance as an industry. I will tell you though, it does affect cooking pretty
Oh,
significantly.
yeah.
So all of our boils, all of our heads cuts, all of our tails cuts, everything is just you got to go lower. I mean, water boils at I think 204 here.
Yeah.
It's significantly lower than sea level, and it does really change how you distill everything.
Who
And
was
that was
it?
something that took me I think it took me a year of just constantly remembering I had to subtract temperatures off of things in discussions.
Yeah.
Because it just wasn't clicking with me forever, because I always worked at sea level.
Was it Steve Nally that went out to Wyoming and said that,
Yep.
that like, he was like, oh, wow. He hadn't thought about the altitude yet.
Yep.
But yeah, so that we had him on, and he was talking about when he went out to Wyoming whisking, and that change of like geography, you know, everything that was temperature, altitude, all those different things, and how it affected, you know, what he knew and what he had learned, and, you know, when he had been at makers in different places.
He had cooked a few batches, not realizing.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, like way heavy. Yeah. And you can definitely do that. I mean, you can go it's pretty easy to go too hot here.
So you guys are 5,000 feet altitude, right? What is Kentucky? Around 1,000? I know in Columbus we're around 1,000. I assume they're similar.
I mean, technically, just so people don't call me an idiot, we're 4,725 ish feet.
Wow.
But I'm going to round up to be a good showman.
The good men that we are, we always round up.
Yeah, of course. I'm 6 feet tall.
With cleats on, you're 6'2".
Yeah. It was kind of a shock, and it was something I never really considered. I was so worked up in like, how do I learn this brand new system? How do I learn these new people that I'm going to be working with? How do I learn about how to grow grain in some sort of competent manner? And the altitude was just something that it didn't really cross my mind until I had my first beer, you know, and then it was really clear that, oh gosh, this is going to be a bigger issue all along. Yeah. Where it's like water's going to boil different. It's sometimes kind of hard to cook rice here. It's not quite right. I don't think it gets hot enough. So there's lots of real little funny things that you notice when you're living at this high up that you wouldn't normally get.
So where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Massachusetts. Okay. Nice. Yeah, I'm from the coast.
Like where, Boston area, or where?
I'm out from the Outer Cape. So like Eastham, Truro, lived in both of those. Just had a family in the fishing industry, and then I moved to a short period. Then I was in Alaska, and then Boston, then Idaho, Oregon, New York, Washington. Here,
all over the place. All right. So
I go over folks out there. If you really love a sort of production and you want to, try live in a bunch of places where that stuff's being made, distilling's a good career for it. You can really you can get to know chunks of this country really well. And I gotta tell you, like it's one of the most, I think it's one of the best perks I've had just in my career, is that I've got to see and get to know and really love so much of this country.
Yeah. So I travel for work a lot, but for me, traveling for work's not even close to being the same as like being in a place for months to learn the place and almost start to feel like a local. I think that's when you really start to understand a place. But I used to work in Waltham for a company.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So in Boston area. But I lived in England as a bartender for 6 months. So that was a small little town on the English Channel. And that was fun. That was probably one of my favorite experiences, just because I felt by the time I left like I was a local. It was, I knew the place, and I had learned so much about the area and the surrounding area. That was fun.
You can give advice and not sound like a fool.
Well, I don't know about that, but I was better. I sounded like less of a fool than I did when I arrived.
My wife actually works for East Boston Medical Center. Now it's called Neighborhood Health Systems, I think.
Before I was a distiller, I worked up at a Harvard Med School up in Roxbury Crossing. So I got pretty familiar with that crew for a little while.
Oh, nice.
That's interesting. It's crazy. Everyone's story.
I know. So you were in New York, so you might be able to follow me on this. One of the tasting notes I'm picking up,
buckle up.
It just me and my East Coast. I grew up in the Poconos, and I had the experience of birch beer. So I'm getting subtle, like right before it's going flat, right before it goes completely flat. You still got a little bit of that tingle on the tongue, but it's got that birch beer kind of feel to it.
Yeah, I get that entirely. And I hadn't thought about birch beer for a long time. I did with the bourbon say at one point put a tasting note in as a watered down Moxie,
Mhm.
and just as like, but no one understood a regional cola. As birch beer, I guess I don't really see it outside of the Northeast.
Yeah, I don't either.
Oh,
There was a place in Alabama, like a cheesesteak place, and they had it on the fountain. I'm like, oh hell yeah, right? You know, I that's not birch beer. You know, pour it back
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah.
Something else.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, I've heard of birch beer. I've never had it before,
Oh,
so I don't
it's
even
so
know.
good.
Is it an actual alcohol?
No,
So
Hmm.
it's like a cola or a soda.
gotcha, like root
We
beer
say
or something.
soda out east too.
Yeah, it's kind of like a good root beer, but a little bit more like a light maple syrup flavor for the sweetness. It's really very pleasant. Like a little bit like sarsaparilla if you've ever had an actual sarsaparilla.
Yeah. All right, that's interesting. I've never.
It's red too.
I'm gonna have to look.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look that up when I get a chance. and
Absolutely.
have some of that. All right, so
I really dig it. I like it. It's very crushable to me. I could sit here and I don't know how much I'm drinking. I'll be like, oh, it's gone.
Oh yeah, it can go real fast. We're greatly. I mean, how can you not be proud of this stuff? And I know I always try to say it on every podcast. Like, I got a really amazing team that's doing this work where I get to be on podcasts. I mean, they're still working right now. So, it's, I do like to make sure that there's recognition that when you support these products, like whether it's me or whatever the distiller is, you're supporting a lot of people that give a shit. There's a lot of people
so
behind
yeah, I
the
guess
scenes.
it's still working hours out there, right? It's
Yeah.
4:15 for you.
Yeah. Oh, I love
All right.
podcast days. I usually go home about an hour early and set up my I just set everything up. I clean my garage. Like, it's very chill.
That's cool.
I am very curious about this at like 110 proof though.
There will be higher numbers coming. That is going to happen, and so cask strength. We haven't quite figured out what that's going to be, but that, trust me, that's on the short list of additional.
What do you normally see from when it comes out at cask strength after it's aged to your liking? What do you normally see? Does it go up or down in proof? What's happening out there?
Oh,
Or does it vary?
we see a slight climb, claim. We see a slight gain, not very much. Again, it's going to be more like what you see in a Bardstown area, but you can only do so much to keep a building insulated when it's 120 degrees out. So it does kind of creep its way in. Only a few proof points. It's pretty stable. It's really easy on the barrels, which is nice. It's not like overly stressing those. So we don't see a lot of not too many leaky heads or tar coming through. I mean, I know everyone wants the idea that every barrel room is perfect looking, but there's usually a couple of really pain in the ass barrels that never want to seal up right. But it's less than I'm used to in other places, so that's really nice.
Well, we're all about short barrels.
Well, economics wise, I get what you're saying, but from a nostalgia walking into a rick house or a warehouse, I want to see those leaky barrels. I want to see and smell that when I walk in. That's what I want to see.
Well, trust me, they're still there, but we're not going out of our way to encourage them as we would if we were just using the natural environment here.
So I think that was a good segue when you guys started talking about the cask strength and stuff. So let's talk about some of the other products that you offer, any plans that you guys have, whether they're short-term, long-term plans, things like that.
Well, we also offer, I think I've mentioned a couple times, the 100% rye vodka called a High Ground Vodka for vodka heads out there. I mean, I only say this because I think it's a little bit of a maligned category. This is me speaking honestly of myself. I think there's a lot of really good vodkas out there that don't get a lot of attention, mostly because there's a lot of bad vodkas out there that do. And
that's a good one.
I agree with that.
I like that.
And it's entirely like, you should give some of them a chance, because if they make a good whiskey, there's a chance they're making an interesting vodka that's got some flavor and got some presence, and they're really kind of honoring what's in there. And they're also working with the most neutral vodkas come out of plants that are way bigger than any distillery. So they're working with a smaller scale level of equipment. There's some really kind of cool things that are out there. I like ours. I think it's really fun. I like Timberline vodka, which I made up in the Northwest. And, I've come across a bunch. There's a great one that comes out of As Above, So Below distillery down in Santa Fe. So there's tons of good vodkas out there. So that's one. Two, we got the bourbon, which I mentioned, and that's going to be a 60% earth tones corn, 20% rye, 10% oats, 10% barley, grain bill, aged 4 years, same barrel conditions, all that same sort of stuff. I know I told you about the earth tones corn, but man, they give it like such a nice cherry cola quality.
We're gonna have to
And usually when I say that, it really
Mhm.
it hits right away. I say cherry cola, and they're like, "Oh yeah." You'll notice that through a lot of the stuff that we make. There's always like a fruit-like sweetness, something that's a little bit more subtle, and
My
so
mouth
that's
is
true.
salivating listening to you talk
Well, I
about
mean,
that.
when we talk about Stag Junior, a lot of times that
Very
flavor
cherry
that comes
cola.
through
Mhm.
when you get to some of the Stag Juniors is cherry cola. So I
Mhm.
mean, that's
Yeah.
not unheard of for a bourbon to get that type of flavor.
Oh hell no, hell no. And it's just, but it's really, it always feels a little bit special when you have something that's like a real touch point memory wise, and
Sure.
that's a nice one. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it with the rye, and then there's also the American single malt, and this American single malt means the world to me. I know I mentioned that I started at Clear Creek Distillery. Well, Steve McCarthy was the man that started Clear Creek. He was also the man that first released American single malts. McCarthy's Oregon single malt is still the highest rated. One of their releases was the highest rated American single malts by Whiskey Advocate, and they've been doing it since 1996. So Steve trained me, and to me, the category isn't just about the whiskey and all the cool things that all the distillers are out there doing. It's about really saying thank you to a pretty important man in my life. And so thank you, Steve, and support your local American single malt producer because it's cool. And who would have thought that there'd be a new type of whiskey in our lifetime?
So let me ask you this: what makes so just for our listeners, we mainly talk about bourbon. We do some ryes here and there. We've had a couple American single malt whiskeys on there.
Yeah, we did Westward whiskey.
We've had
Oh,
a
yeah.
couple that
Yeah,
we
yeah, yeah.
loved. Westward was one of them,
Yeah.
and a couple that we just we're not that big a fan of.
Yeah.
So for me,
That's what's fun, you know?
well, and so talk us through that, because the ones that I haven't liked, in my opinion, tasted like burnt tires.
Yeah.
But the ones that I do like just have
Band-Aids.
so much flavor and something going on that is appealing. And someone may like the flavor of burnt tires. I don't know, but that's just and maybe they don't get that out of it. Maybe it's all like, what's the thing that only like certain percentage of the population tastes when they have cilantro or something like that?
Soap.
They taste soap or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe there's something in American single malt that makes me taste tires that I'm a small portion of the percentage. I have no idea, but talk about American single malt. What does it take to become an American single malt, and what gives it a variety of flavor?
All right, this is great. I thank you for giving me the soapbox to stand on for a second. So American single malt's got to be 100% malted barley that is distilled and produced in one distillery.
That's
it can be mashed up anywhere.
Single,
so like
references the one distillery, right?
Malt equals just malt.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it can be, you don't have to make your own mash. You can partner up with a local brewery or something like that. That's specifically written into the the definition. I'm a member of the American Single Malt Whiskey Commission alongside everyone from Westward and Westland and all those guys. Like they were the folks that started it. I came in early on, but not one of the founding class. That being said, huge advocate, and there's a couple of other details that are about like distilling proof. I think it has to be it can be 160 or below for distillation proof, and there's some barrel size limitations that are involved as well. But it's all largely to keep us on the same protected class of what single malt can be as what you would find in Scotland or Japan.
Okay.
And the point of it is that while bourbon and rye are very successful here, they don't have the same cachet in other countries as malt does. And malt is decidedly the winner of the whiskey world war. Like it's just what everyone drinks. So as distillers, us wanting to prove American distillation is something, creating American single malt and having it tied to that same definition, but protecting it in its same way as something of excellence prevents bad actors from coming in and mixing it with a whole bunch of weird blenders and stuff like that and calling it single malt because there's no structured definition. So that's kind of like the purposeful thing. Now, the real effect of this is going to be kind of, this is why it's cool. So that's, I talked to you the details. Now, why it's cool. You, with single malt, is this freedom of using different sorts of barrels, using different, it has to be 100% malted barley, but the limitations on what sort of barrel you can use are gone. You can use used barrels as much as you want. You can use sherry barrels. You can use uncharred barrels. You can do whatever the hell you want. And that's a big part of shaping the flavors. And it's a big impact on bourbon and rye, but the limitations of choices are a lot smaller. With single malt, you can grow really, really big with this. Yes, you had a question.
Yeah, while you were talking about the barrels, before you moved on, can you do multiple barrels? So can you put it in like a new charred oak barrel and then finish it in a brandy barrel, or finish it in a tawny barrel or something like that?
Yes, and all of that counts towards age statement.
Okay.
So if you put it, you can put it in a used sherry barrel for 7 years, and it's a 7-year whiskey. But if anyone was to you would not be able to call that same whiskey bourbon, even if it was used sherry for 6 years and bourbon in 1. It would no longer be 7 years; it'd be 1 year. And so it's just kind of how you play with the limitations. And this isn't to call out one or the other as being preferred. It's just that, it's a new game for us as people that
I
get
just
to
wanted
design
to
things.
clear it up for me.
And what this eventually does is that it allows certain aspects of like how things are, how you present your own local like culinary history and the food you love and your cultural stuff, and like what makes you kind of bring your own flavors into whiskey. It just gives you this whole other painting set to work with. And in the same way that you look at what's happened in Scotland, which is fairly small compared to the United States, and you see the Isla folks, not exclusively peaty, but largely peaty. Yeah. The Speyside folks, not exclusively fruity, but a lot of fruit up there. And how everyone's kind of like a little purposefully, don't buy into anyone telling you that wasn't a little intentional. Of course it was. People like to have fun. It's more fun. Because it's a little bit of what they wanted to do, but also a little bit of just what was like their cultural backgrounds. You're going to see that same thing manifesting here. And the Andalusia Striker out of Texas is a great example. It's an American single malt that is smoked with all of the traditional Texas barbecue woods of that region. And these are things that are happening exclusively within American single malt. So over time, similar to Scotland, you'll see these little like factions of flavor develop across the country that are influenced by everything we got going on. But because we're such a bigger country with so many different types of people in it, it's going to be the most interesting thing to happen to whiskey ever.
So just a ton of variety across the board then.
And it's going to evolve over the next, 40, 50 years, like certainly beyond my lifetime. And that's kind of fun to be at the beginning of.
No, it is. And to be fair, like I've had some single malt whiskeys that I've just really enjoyed. But then I had some that I was just like, oh my God, this is not good. But that's true of anything really, I guess. You mentioned Scotch. Like there's some Isla Scotches that I cannot stand. That peatiness reminds me of, I'm an older guy, so it reminds me of those old Band-Aid tins when you would open up and smell nothing but iodine. I get that on Isla Scotch and I can't get past it. And it almost makes me sick in my stomach. But like a Highland Scotch or like you said, Speyside Scotch, that fruitiness comes through and makes the peat a little bit more subtle. Blended Scotch, like a Johnny Walker, I could handle that. That's fine. But like, I don't know.
Honestly, I think if you want to know why it's so varied right now, I think it's twofold. I think it's that your flaws are going to be and your wins are going to be so much more pronounced in single malt than they are in anything else.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And also people are kind of new to it in this country, so we're just not very good yet. And it was so funny when you're talking about burnt tires. Back when I was, 2007, I got one of those bottles of McCarthy's from 2007, and I nostalgically opened it, and me and my coworkers this is 15 years later or however long it was, I opened it and we all poured it around. tasted like burnt tires. It tasted just like burnt tires. It was awful. It was such a bad whiskey.
I'm glad I'm not the only person who feels that way.
And so, maybe it's just a thing that happens until you figure out how to not let it happen. I'm not entirely sure, but
Right.
but that was a really funny call out, because if Caitlin Bartley ever hears this, she'll be laughing about that, because we were really critical of that bottle.
That's funny. I mean, to be honest, I love barley, and like, I think, what is it, Old Elk, that has like a 15% malted barley or something. Like, I like when barley is in whiskey, because I feel like it gives it a nice, like, there's a cacao and a nice mouthfeel that I think comes from it. But yeah, there's something about like the 100% malted barley. In some cases I've just absolutely loved, and some I've just absolutely, it's just interesting to me. That's all, I guess.
I also think that sometimes people go a little crazy with the degrees of malt that they're tossing in there, and maybe not all of those ones are really making the best flavors for us.
Well, I'm glad you cleared some of that up. So that was,
Yeah.
to me, that was a little bit of education for malted barley, because some of it, like, I knew some of the things that it required, like the 100% and but the variety of wood and stuff like that. That's very interesting to me. So that at least opens my eyes to potentially how that variety and that, variance from one end of the spectrum to the other could potentially exist. So that's
there's so much good to be said about a second or a third fill barrel. I truly mean it. Like, there's some amazing third fill barrels out there for single malt that are way better than a first fill. And to me, that's like, just the ability to do that alone makes it a fun category. And in all the sort of ways that what's so wonderful and great about making rye and making bourbon is this reverence for tradition. I mean, hell, the Bardstown Rickhouse, it's right there. But it's kind of fun to be part of something that's creating tradition now. And that's why I feel like, let's not pick sides on this one. Let's just see what's the heck's out there,
Yeah. I mean, just like anything, there's going to be beers you don't like, beers you do like. There's going to be, just like with anything, I feel like bourbons, ryes, whatever, you're going to find some you really enjoy and some that you really don't. So why would single malt be any different, I guess?
There you go.
So I know it's been almost an hour. One of the things we like to make sure that we get out there to anyone listening is, how do we follow you? Social media, website, personally, if you have any type of presence on social media that you want to promote, what's the best ways of following?
Minden Mill is Instagram. It's you can go to mindenmill.com. We probably have a Twitter. Not sure on that one. But yeah, we're all over. You can just type in mindenmill.com. You can definitely find us on Instagram. You can buy our stuff via our website. We ship through Flaviar, so you can find their list of states that they are allowed to ship through. Right on, I think, on our website, but you can also just go through this ordering process. They'll tell you. You can also find a store locator on our websites. And then gosh, what else? What else was I going to say? So those ones. Oh, and then me. Sorry, I don't have social media. I made the choice many years ago to get the heck off. Man. I was like, I'm not doing this.
You must live a much better, cleaner, less distracted life than the rest of us.
People say, "How do you look so young?" And I just say, I don't have Facebook. It's just
it's got to be. So let me ask you this last question, kind of a carry on, or what we were just talking about. You talked about Flaviar, however you say it. So that extends your reach, obviously. But as far as brick and mortars and distribution, how many states are you guys available in right now?
I want to say 26, 27. We're looking at that, if not now, like within the next month or so. And we're going to be all 50 by the end of next year. Again, the store locator is on the website. I'm constantly surprised when I look it up and I can see that I can get stuff in my hometown. Like, that blows me away.
That's cool.
And a lot of it, I should quickly mention there's one other product that we make that's doing really well. It's a coffee liqueur that we partnered up with a local coffee roastery called Alpen Sierra. Now the coffee liqueur is called Evil Bean. And, for folks that want something that's a little sweeter around the holidays, that's
or even just like
checking
an
out too.
Espresso martini or something like that.
I've been doing an espresso tonic with it. I really like it. It's kind of refreshing on the weekend. It works for me.
So one last question. I know we talked about a lot of things. One thing I didn't hear talked about was production. What are you guys looking at right now as far as like barrel fills per year? And then you can break it down per product or just overall, however you want to do that.
All I'm going to say right now is plenty. We are laying down a ton of product right now. We're kind of responding to the whims of everything as we start growing. So I don't want to put any numbers down and promise anything, but I wouldn't worry at all about it. We're pretty darn busy these days.
I mean, if you're planning on being in 50 states, I would imagine you are putting down a lot of products. So
yeah. And it's certainly a hustle. So as we grow and we grow, it's all about trying to deliver bigger, better products.
All right. Well, last thing, before we thank you for coming on, any parting wisdom, any last minute things you didn't get to talk about that you wanted to mention?
Just folks out there, thanks for supporting your small distilleries and in this podcast. And thank you guys for having me on. It really is a lot of fun. One of these days I'll be getting out to Columbus. I got some friends out that way.
Well, whenever you do, make sure you look us up because we would definitely meet up for a couple of pours. Minden Mill, thank you for coming on. Joseph, this was for me. We always drink for the first time on the podcast with the people that are on the podcast with us. So it's always for me, when it's like rye, it's like Russian roulette. Like, I don't know if I'm going to like something or not. I was pleasantly surprised by this. So this is something I could definitely sit with for an evening. I mean, that's really about the best praise I can give a rye for me normally. So I really enjoyed this. I thought it packed a lot of flavor. There was a lot of complexity and depth. It did have a little dill presence, but it was subtle enough that I was perfectly fine with it. I don't know what you thought, JD.
I really enjoyed it. It's got all the qualities I enjoy in a rye, and I would reach for it over a lot.
Yeah. Thanks, I would agree with that. So, but Joseph, thank you again for coming on. Really appreciate it. And again, we'd love to have you on any other time you want to, talk about any of your other products, your single malt or your bourbon.
I would love to be on again. Next time something fun happens, I'll let you guys know.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.
All right. Well, that wraps up this episode. Thank you for joining in on yet another hunt for great bourbon. Please give us a 5-star review anywhere you are listening. But if you don't, leave us some constructive criticism in the review so that we can better improve our show. But until then, sit back, grab a pour, kick up your feet, and enjoy some bourbon.
Tune in each week. Sit back. Tune in each week. Grab a pour. Tune in each week. Kick up your feet and enjoy. Kick up your feet and enjoy.
The Bourbon Hunters podcast has been craft distilled, produced, recorded, and edited by Dude Pool. For any feedback, questions, or episode ideas, please reach out to info@bourbonhunters.com.